Hey, thanks for listening into the REC Experience. This is Season 2, Episode 20, and it is the season finale. And did we ever bring you guys a treat? Laura, tell them who we had on today.
We had the pleasure of having back to the studio President and CEO of Royal LePage Canada.
I love that you mentioned that. I like that you mentioned that we just had him back because he came in. Actually, we went to go see him
at his office. Yes, but it was for the season finale of season 1.
Yes, and so we thought it fitting to bring him into our new studio for this season.
Yeah, we wanted to show off a little bit.
Yeah, and he loved it. He really did. Before we get into what we spoke about, Laura, I want you to touch on a very special event that you went to a few days ago. Talk a little bit about it and why it was so special for you.
Well, it's actually fitting kind of to being the introduction to Phil's discussion with you today, because the event is actually to raise money for special needs Olympic athletes. So very near and dear to my heart because I took care of a special needs person for about almost 4 years in my 20s. And
shout out to
Heather Green, Miss Heather Green, one of my best friends to this day. Sweet girl. Well, I shouldn't say girl. She's in her 20s now. But we really just hung out, her and we would do lots of fun stuff together. But I got to see firsthand the struggles that families deal with and that she actually herself deals with. So I love giving back to that community. But more importantly, what I was going to say was the fact that it's Olympic focused. I'm a big advocate of athletics.
And you want to be an Olympic skier when you want to go.
Yeah, well, I wanted to be an Olympic anything when I was a little kid. I would have done any sport that I could get. I'm still hoping for curling. Maybe I have a chance there. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so that's why I mentioned today, because we talked about all things Canada in terms of the market across the nation. And Phil had some wonderful things to say about this country, and it just made me feel really proud again. So I feel like
Back to the event for a second, because the coolest thing, other than all the people you got to meet there, you and your hubby went, I'm sure ate a lot of great food. How much did they raise that night?
So the event is called Limitless, and it's a black tie gala, like I said, to raise money for Special Olympics. They raised $2.1 million that evening. So I was surrounded by, very giving people for such a wonderful cause. It was amazing to see.
That's awesome. To raise that much in a night is fantastic. We actually have our event tonight coming up, which is in support of sick kids. So if you are driving downtown or taking your dog for a walk or in the park or at the gym and you're listening to this early in the day, we invite you to come out to our event at CC Whiskey Lounge and Bar, Cool 1920 Prohibition Bar, for our annual gala that we do. It's our third annual, and we are raising, essentially actually just asking for people to bring an unwrapped toy in support of sick kids.
Yes.
And so it's all kind of
also
fitting,
a great charity, yes.
Just amazing. So I like this time of year, right?
It's a good time to give back.
Yeah.
We always think of all the things we have to do and the Christmas trees and the lights and the gifts we have to buy. But if we really strip it down to what the season should be about, it's about giving back and being thankful for all the things we have and the great successes we ourselves have had in the year.
And to that point, it being season 2's finale, a huge thank you to everyone who supported us in the last, what are we at now for this season? I think we did about 18, 19 episodes. And for everyone that came out, everyone who's been listening, the feedback and the sharing, thank you so much.
It's been overwhelming to see how far this has come in a short period of time and how much people are supporting us and gunning for us. Yeah. Or not gunning for us, the complete opposite of that.
Yeah. Well, gunning for us, and I know what you mean, right, Carl? Like, I know what you mean. Like, they've been supporting us, and there probably is a few people gunning for us, because if we're not doing something big enough and you don't have any haters, well, then you're probably not doing anything big enough.
Right, but I'd say mostly it's been love. It's been love. So
like 99.9%
Which means what, Jas? Because
love.
season 1 and 2 have been successful.
What do you mean?
Are we going to do a third?
I think we're for sure doing a third. You guys are going to see some trailers.
So I don't get a
out.
vacation yet.
No.
Okay.
So because we're going to start working on everything that we can do better for season 3. And we have some really cool guests lined up for season 3. But today's episode was all about what's happening in the market from a grand Canadian level. And we also dove right into, obviously, with our headquarters, REC is headquarters here based out of Toronto. We spoke specifically about the micro market, which is the GTA. And for the first time in all my conversations with Phil on and off air, we really got to know him.
Yes, what an interesting man.
He really is.
I mean, within the first 2 minutes, like, whoa.
And he brought out some really good stories.
Yes.
This guy is so well traveled, and I didn't know how much of a tech whiz he is, which is awesome because he, as most of you know, is the leader of our organization at LePage Canada, and so REC is stands for Real Estate Center, but we are under the umbrella of LePage Canada. So to have him as our leader and our CEO is just awesome.
I definitely felt like we were in good hands.
Right?
Didn't you get that
feeling
too?
too?
I've always felt that way.
Yeah.
But, I mean, really, after listening to him, you can tell how educated he is, and he keeps up with, current news and economics and things that would impact the market. And I feel very confident after listening to what he had to say.
Yeah, and just his thoughts on entrepreneurship. He gave some tips on leadership. And then, most important, also his vision for where LePage is headed. And it's just nice to see that we're all kind of on the same page. And what I mean by that is bringing value first. It's really the only way to win in today's marketplace. So, Laura, I will say to you, thank you not only for doing the intro with me today, but huge shout out to you for the whole season. Shout out to Simos, who you guys see in the background and comes onto the podcast episodes as much as he can, to the rest of the team behind the camera, Clem, Q, Steven, Ala, Tyler, the whole REC team, Shemi, love you guys all. Thank you for everything you guys have done, not only for this season, but for season 1. And to you, the listener, I ask that if we've brought you any value, please feel free to share this, like it, comment, and get this into the ears of your friends and family. And like we always say, we're adults here. We can handle constructive criticism. It's the only way that we can get better. So again, thank you, Laura.
Thank you. And I guess to our listeners, we'll be talking to them soon. So until then, happy holidays.
Happy holidays and have a great start to 2019. Have a listen to this week's episode, Season 2, Episode 20. It's the season finale, and we are very excited to catch you for Season 3. Take care. I am so excited today to have the president and CEO of LePage Canada join us. How are you doing, Mr. Phil Soper?
Absolutely great, and it's wonderful to be back.
Thank you so much. As our listeners know, and now our new YouTube viewers, Phil joined us approximately 8 months ago for our episode O Canada, which is till this day our most listened to episode.
Is
so
it
thank
really?
you to that, Phil.
Well, that's great. Well, and congratulations for doing what it takes to get out there. There's a lot of noise in social channels, so cutting through it is... it's a bit of an art.
Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And I was speaking with the executive producer, Laura, and my team. And I said 8 months ago after leaving your office, I was so excited because I finally got the opportunity to sit down with you. But for me, I was like, I can't wait to have him again because it was one of my first times actually sitting down and interviewing someone.
It didn't show.
Okay, well, thank you for that. But I wanted kind of a round two. And as we were sitting down, the team and I, we figured, why not bring in Phil? This is actually going to be the finale episode for season 2. At this time, to kind of wrap up what's happened with the year.
Sure.
So we're going to go high level market update, Canadian real estate market update, low level in terms of specific cities. Sure. But what we've also changed, and you and I were just talking off air, Phil, is that we've done a little bit of a change in terms of topics for the show. We've branched off and spoke about entrepreneurship and leadership. I obviously wanted to get your take on that. Before we get started, I had a couple of questions as I flirt around your Instagram feed, and I have to ask, as I just bring up a couple things, and Clem, who's always behind the camera, Clem, do me a favor, when we're in post-production here, let's make sure we bring up Phil's Instagram profile because there is some amazing pictures. Where did this all start from?
Well, you know what? My mom bought my first Nikon camera when I was, I guess, in grade 7.
Okay.
And I've been a hobbyist ever since. I was a contributing editor at university in photography. I did a little bit of photojournalism afterwards, not professionally, but I've actually taken pictures in 2 conflicts. In Sri Lanka, where I was arrested and my camera equipment confiscated, although I did get it back.
Okay.
And in Lima, in some civil unrest where I got tear gassed. So when I was a young guy, I loved the thrill of photojournalism, but I've always taken pictures. I'm doing a little more video now.
Right.
But something I've gotten into in the last 2 years is drone photography. So I love the opportunity that a drone gives for different angles, honestly.
Right.
I'm so inept at drone cinematography, and I've worked with some pros. I've got a buddy who's a LePager in the West End, who's a pro, and to see them work the 8 axes that are possible on a drone simultaneously, it's a beauty to behold. But for me, it's like a tripod in the sky. It gives another opportunity to point the camera in a unique way.
For sure. I was talking to the production team earlier today. I said, I think in this room, we're going to get a drone to have kind of a bird's eye view of you and I talking, right? Why not? Just see what we can do in terms of post-production. So, Clem, that's on your list, my friend. Thank you. A lot of presidents and CEOs don't take the time to be on social. I need to ask you, what's your thoughts on that?
Very good question. So it's almost 10 years now since I launched my Twitter account, which would have been the first social channel we had for a person out of the company and my first foray into it. When we first started it, it was driven out of communications. I remember it was the fall, so it was probably September, and our communications group would write tweets and send them to me, and I go, ooh, that doesn't sound like me. And I think it lasted about 6 weeks.
Okay.
And then I said, okay, this isn't going to work. And I said, I'll just do it myself. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the reach.
Right.
So
you're very thoughtful. I mean, even your captions on Instagram, very, very thoughtful. Facebook.
You pay attention then, because a lot of people don't.
Phil, I love the long form that you're doing on Facebook.
Okay.
And you go very deep. I'm not just here to stroke the ego by any means. I really, really take the time to read it, and very, very thoughtful.
Well, you know what? So I've got a Twitter account, a LinkedIn account, a Facebook account, and an Instagram account. And they each serve slightly different purposes. Instagram's very visually oriented. Facebook is for a guy who runs a company as big as ours. And, we've got 18,000 LePagers plus another, call it 3,000 management and staff. And then we run some other businesses, adds another 2,500 people. To reach that kind of audience, social channels have been amazing, just for management purposes in the company.
Right.
And there are people who won't open my emails who will read my Facebook
Right.
essays or posts. And it sometimes triggers some interesting dialogue, sometimes some angry dialogue, which is never what I'm looking for. But
Right.
if you don't touch the edges of controversy, you're often not adding much value. And then LinkedIn I use as for more serious business messages, and the audience there and in Twitter is very external. So
Yes.
there's thousands of people who just aren't part of the company. So I'm much more careful about sharing. Now, not that anything you should expect everything you do through social channels. As a matter of fact, anything you do electronically,
Right.
You should be willing to stand up and stand behind it.
Right.
But it's different. A billboard is different than a letter.
Right.
Right. So for me, LinkedIn, Twitter are billboards. Facebook is predominantly a letter to my friends.
I feel like you would agree with me with this statement that these are not fads anymore.
No,
Right?
they're,
Like, these are staples, and anyone thinking about
Absolutely.
getting into business or entrepreneurship, for the couple of listeners out there and our viewers, Phil, what would you advise? Like, how do they get over that hump of being scared of sitting in front of a mic? Or, we have 3-4 cameras rolling right now, right?
Yeah.
Even someone who's just thinking about getting into real estate as a
Right.
salesperson, how do they get over that? How do they get over that hump?
Well, I think the first thing is it's not for everybody. Not everybody is you.
Thank you.
I think both you're good at it. It's important for business, for your clients, for your team, but you also enjoy it, don't you?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
If you didn't enjoy it,
Yeah.
it would come across.
I mean, aside from real estate, not to cut you off, aside from real estate, I could do this all day long. All day long.
It doesn't pay as well as real estate.
Well, yeah, exactly. I love investing into real estate first
Yes,
and foremost,
yes,
right?
yes.
But after you and I are done, I would bring someone else. I could do this all day. So I
Right.
get that point.
Yeah.
You got to enjoy it.
But even if you don't enjoy it,
Right.
Like I've got friends who are accountants and actuaries, and I couldn't do that for a living, but they actually enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
I've got friends who are doctors. I've got friends who are drafts people.
Right.
So if you don't enjoy what you do, find something else to do. Even if it pays less.
Yes.
I know they're at a certain level. People have to feed their families,
Right.
and there's the maintenance. But social channels, if it becomes a central theme of your business, you have to enjoy it. But I've always said this in business, there are certain things that every leader will excel at, but there's many things that they have to have at least an entry-level basic competency. So you couldn't lead a business without having a knowledge of financial statements and how
Obviously.
money works.
Right.
But you may not be the kind of person who gets great joy at the thought of the monthly financial reviews. But you're going to do the basics. I'd look at communication as one of those things. And social channels are just another way to communicate, and you have to have at least a basic competency. You can outsource some of this.
Right.
You could be the quiet person on your team, and
Right.
you could have a boisterous, articulate member of your team who loved it be conveying the messages. I think it's handy, but not required. But it's handy when the leader themselves
Yes.
gets excited about communications.
Look, with your Instagram profile, so I follow you everywhere, specifically your Instagram, because that's where I think I spend the most of my time.
Yep. Certainly the most contemporary of the widely followed channels.
For sure. It really it gives me an insight of what you're up to and who you are. And when I started to see those pictures come up, there's a shot that you have of, I think, going south onto the DVP. I don't know if that was a drone or you stood on the top of your car or something. The colors and it was a beautiful shot.
Yeah, that was a drone shot.
Was
in
that?
the,
I'm thinking of a couple
Don,
months ago.
Don Valley.
Right.
Yep.
Going down south.
Yeah. Hike into the woods. People
Yes.
don't realize how much green space there is in the GTA.
I know.
We have beautiful, we have coyotes and deer, and I'm from Alberta, and people think of Ontario, they really don't get it if they haven't been out here, but they think of it as this massive freeway
concrete
place,
jungle.
but there is so much green space
Right.
in the GTA, and it's beautiful.
I love it. So after university, I want to know a little bit about you
Sure.
now, Phil. So after university, what was the next steps? What did you get into?
Well, I took a job. I wanted some adventure, so I took a job in India. I wanted to go somewhere far.
I just read that. Yes, okay, continue. Was
so-
it Bombay?
Bombay,
Yep.
yeah. Bombay is what's called then. It
Yeah.
was shortly thereafter it became Mumbai. But I worked for Thomas Cook, the big travel banking firm. And then I traveled. I worked for a period for Husky Oil, not very long, about 2 years. I became a land agent. So
Okay.
there's traditionally called landmen. So the three key roles in the oil industry are the geologist who finds the oil or gas,
Okay.
the engineer who gets it out of the ground, and the landman or the land agent who negotiates the deals.
Got it.
So between oil companies, where it's going, that sort of thing. So
kind
I
of
did
your
that.
first taste with real
Yeah.
estate. Okay.
So I did that for a couple of years, but my degree was actually in computer science. So I wanted to work for IBM. It was a bit back in the 80s. People wanted to work for giant companies, Xerox, IBM, Procter & Gamble. It's a little bit different now. A lot more entrepreneurship, a lot more interest in smaller companies. Although I've even got a point on sort of how the world has evolved and how it's going back to big companies, but that's an aside.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, so I mounted a little campaign to get into IBM, and I was successful. It took about 5 or 6 months, very persistent. They like getting kids right out of school
Right.
and melding their minds, and I was what they called, even though I was in my mid-20s, I wasn't exactly old. I was my mind had been spoiled by experiences,
Sure.
and they like lockdown. One quick little segue.
Yeah, for sure.
I go through this interview process wearing a dark suit
Okay.
because that's what you had to wear back then. And I wore it. I had one suit.
Okay.
I wore it on my first day to work, and then the second day I came in a tweed jacket, a brown tweed jacket, a tie, of course,
Right.
white shirt. And my manager, the systems engineering manager, goes, "What are you wearing?" And I looked at my jacket and I opened it. I go, "Harris tweed?" In this innocent little voice, he goes, "Go home and change. You can't wear that." So this is, and I laughed because
Things have
IBM
changed.
today in IT, you're lucky if people wear shirts. Yeah, right.
Definitely they wear jogging pants and hoodies, yeah.
Let alone, But back then it was very conformist.
Right.
And I was a bit of a non-conformer in a conformist world.
Okay.
I loved IT, and I worked there for 15 years. It was worked all around the world. I worked in New York, in Silicon Valley. I worked in and lived for call it assignments. I had a stint in Paris. Had a stint in London, England. It was really, really an exciting time. But I had a family, growing family, and at one time I found myself as a single parent with a couple of young kids and living in Toronto, and they wanted to move me back to the States. And I had these two kids, and
How old at the
they
time?
were 18 months and about 4.5.
Wow.
And I just didn't want to move. And so a buddy of mine from university was working was running a Brookfield company. And he says, "I know this guy in Brookfield's real estate arm, LePage, who's looking for someone to run their relocation company. You should meet him." And I go, "Relocation?" But I'd been moved around a lot. I go, "Gosh, I don't know if I'm interested in that." And this is 2000.
Okay.
And the 90s were the original .com era. There's a lot of parallels to what we're seeing here. But it was exciting, and things were changing rapidly. And I went and I looked into this, and this was, call it administrative outsourcing. So it was processing a lot of paperwork, a typical relocation file. Say you're moving someone from Bank of Montreal from Toronto to Calgary, you'd have 1,000 pieces of paper in their file.
Wow.
There's, they're cutting the lawn, working with the real estate professionals involved in marketing the property, all this administrative. And it was an interesting job. And, I didn't want to move to New York again. And so I said, okay. And I also didn't want to spend my whole career at IBM. I'd been there 15 years.
You just got tired? Well, so
Yeah,
I want to get in your head
exactly.
for a second. Did you just get tired of it, or
No, you know what?
not your passion anymore?
It was more, I never saw myself as the lifer in
Got
that
it.
company that now I'd already worked in the oil industry and I'd done some traveling, so I wasn't the classic right out of school, work for one company, get the gold watch and retire. But
Okay.
I was itchy. I
Yes.
was itchy.
I like that.
IBM was great to me, and up to that stage had been a fabulous place to work. Now, never underestimate the power of luck in career planning. I left, and within 6 months, the dot-com bubble burst, and my predecessor, or my successor, I should say, at IBM, had to lay off like 600 people.
Oh, wow.
It was a really messy time, and I stepped into, within 2 years, that fellow who hired me had retired, and I became the president of the overall company, and it has been a fabulous 15 years. Like an
Amazing.
incredible run. So it was a really lucky move back then, but it turned out I was destined for this kind of role. This is, I love this industry. I love the people, the energy, the personalities. It is a great industry.
I
and
can
very
totally
lucky.
see why you love it, Phil,
Yeah.
because I've got to really know you in the last, T minus, say, 10 months or so, but obviously have known you for a few years.
Sure.
And you are perfect for this job.
Well, thank you.
Well, one, because you take the
We're
time.
each kind of perfect for our jobs.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
there you go.
Yeah, the fact that you take the time to sit down. I mean, Sherry, shout out to Sherry. She is the
my
best.
EA. Yeah.
Yes. She's just always willing to take our call and do whatever she possibly can. You're so busy, you're all over the country, but to take time, that is, in my opinion, is really a great sign of a leader.
It's really the most important time, or I have to spend time with the board. I have to spend time with investors, just like you do with your investors. I have to spend time internally managing the company. But the most valuable time I think any leader can spend is at the point where they touch their customer.
Yes.
So where you are working with your clients, if I can add value at that point, or learn from what you're doing, it is the most valuable time that any leader can spend. So one of the things we try to do at the company, we have two main goals. One is to leverage technology to drive your revenue, to help you increase your top line. Mm-hmm. But the other one that's less glamorous, but I think equally as important, is to try to find ways, business services and technology, to allow you to spend less time worrying about the administration of your practice and more time with customers and your team, right, on the front lines.
For sure.
And that's how you drive a successful
It gives
business.
us more of an opportunity to sit down with our team and pass along messages that you give us, because we're not spending time doing the administrative stuff, right? So in terms of the technology, that's a huge, huge help.
Good.
I do want to pick your brain on a thought that you mentioned a second
Sure.
ago. You're seeing a shift from entrepreneurs and going back into big companies. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's the natural pendulum swinging thing that happens in business where there's consolidation. Hard to believe. I saw a piece on economic value that showed that the big 5 tech companies, and we could name them: Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. What would the 5th be?
Ooh, I'm thinking app companies,
Apple.
Apple. There you go. Yeah.
Those 5 companies
that fruit has done really
just
well.
5 companies out of the thousands and thousands of companies around the world. They have contributed 25% of all growth over the last 10 years in equities around the world. All stock market growth, 5 companies. So there's, and of course they have assimilated many, Instagram,
Facebook
rolls up into Facebook, right? LinkedIn rolls up into Microsoft.
Yep.
So there's been a tremendous amount of consolidation in the space and in real estate. If you look at LePage, in recent years, we've been growing at a pace of about 1,000 net new frontline practitioners, agents a year. I can tell you, once you get outside of the top 10 companies in the country, there aren't very many companies that are 1,000 agents. And yet we're adding 1,000 a year. So there's this consolidation into bigger firms that can provide, that can make the investments in capital and training, and that have the brand awareness to make a difference on the front lines for people.
And I think it just comes back to a word that you used not too long ago, value. Right? Where the bigger companies now can bring, if they bring more value.
Right, if. I mean, you can also be a Sears or, sadly, a General Motors that are, you look at Tesla that just, and the jury's still out, I know.
Yeah.
He's a fascinating leader, but he's also a little crazy sometimes. But, they just cracked the top 10 in terms of vehicle sales. And if you look there, at position number 9 is Tesla, thanks to their, what is it, the Model 3? So, and GM, unfortunately for them, is, they're consolidating because they need to stay viable. And this company that a decade ago was formally in Chapter 11. So it's just being big is no guarantee of success. Sears,
Blockbuster,
Target, Blockbuster, the list goes on and on. But if you do it well and you use size and scale for the benefit of your consumer clients, and you don't get into belly button gazing, and a lot of big companies, they spend too much time worrying about internals and channel conflict, et cetera, and not enough time worried about their client. That's when you get tripped up.
Does that keep you up at night?
Oh, yeah. You know what? I worry about, I think good leaders, and this is a little bit of a contradiction. They are both constantly worried, but they have in a way short memories for the negative. So
I like that.
When mistakes happen, you try something, it doesn't work, you got to move on, and you can't dwell on it, and you can't let the fear of failure stop you from innovating and trying something new. And at the same time, you have to. So that's the forget. But the other side of it is you have to focus on using your size and scale to bring the value to more. And the more you can, Google is able to do amazing things with Google Maps because so many of us implicitly participate by letting Google know where our phone is.
For sure.
Right? And so when they know, they create, like if you look at rollerpage.ca, and it amazes me that we've had this in market now for 18 months, which is insanely long in real estate terms. We have travel time search that allows you to put in where you work and say, I want a 35-minute commute or a 40-minute commute maximum, and it'll draw an irregular map using real-time Google traffic data because we're a Google Enterprise partner. That's an amazing use of size and scale.
Oh, for sure.
And then you've got to make sure that they don't take our information and use it for a purpose that's good for them but not good for clients. But I'm a believer that the market is the best determinant of that, and not like government regs
Senate,
and things.
government. I agree.
Clients get mad. They stop using your products if you don't treat them with respect and add value.
I mean, if you onto that point, like in regard to Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, I think he would be quite silly to use that platform for negative because he needs the end user.
Yeah.
And the second one, if Phil, you call me and say, Jas, they've been, Facebook used my information in a negative way. Well, I'm going to stop using them. I'm going to tell Clem and Laura and see, it just goes on and on and on, right? And so
and then you withdraw.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And without us, the end user, Facebook's not going to be anything.
Well, and you know what? And we're in the real estate industry, we're facing this to a certain degree. The Toronto Real Estate Board, for noble reasons, had a long battle with the Federal Competition Bureau over the sharing of the industry's data on house transactions. The noble aspect of this was, in concert with this focus on competition, in Canada there was an increased focus on the privacy and the protection of consumers' information around home sales. So even though you could find it in public records, it was laborious. It wasn't like put on
Very
a public portal. So they took the board in Toronto took the position that they were going to protect consumers' privacy. Part of it was research driven, by the way. They went out to consumers and said, do you think sold data should be on the internet? And if they were a buyer, home buyer, they said absolutely.
Yeah.
And then they asked people who had sold their homes recently, do you think your sold data should be on the internet? Absolutely not. I don't want anybody to know anything about my transaction.
Funny how that works.
Right, exactly. So, we have always taken the position at LePage that openness inevitably leads to a more positive experience for consumers. And so we have gently been urging the big boards like TREB and the Canadian Real Estate Association to be more open. So we were the driver behind the reciprocity model that's been in industry for some time that doesn't exist in the U.S. that allows the major national firms to share their listings with each other. And that's why LePage.ca is the most visited real estate website after Realtor.ca, right? Yeah. Which is owned by the industry overall. It would have a tiny fraction of the visitors if the good people in our competitors didn't share listings with us. And we share our listings with them. Why? Because when a consumer goes to the website, they want a good user experience.
Right.
But they also want to see the product that's available in the market.
And all the product that's available.
Exactly. So by sharing, we provide a service that is meaningful for consumers, and millions of people visit the site all the time. That doesn't exist in the U.S. If you went to coldwarbroker.com in the U.S., you'll only see Coldwell Banker listings, and as a result, they're non-existent, and it's third-party advertising firms that dominate online listings in the U.S., whereas in Canada, it is the industry that provides that service to consumers.
Now, on a macro level, from a LePage perspective, what's the vision, Phil, in 2019? We're almost coming up, in 2020 even, in terms of branding. Yeah. We've had some questions from LePagers that they knew that you and I were going to be sitting down today. Cool. And they said, hey, if you don't mind, can you ask Phil what is the vision from a branding perspective?
Okay. Well, I believe success will come with focus in 3 areas.
Okay.
Leveraging our 105-year-old brand and what it stands for.
Really quickly, Phil.
Sure.
I personally, because I've been in sales and service for 15 years, specifically with real estate, but overall in sales and service, over 20 years, I know how to use that brand of 105. When you said it, I got goosebumps. Like really.
Yep.
You said 105 years that we've been around, I felt like I got goosebumps. Like
it's amazing, Canadian, isn't it?
It's amazing. What is it? How does someone use that? Like someone who's been in the business for 2 years, how does one use that? How do they get that out there?
Well, the brand, when we test in the marketplace, we find we marketing professionals look at brands like they're people. Okay. And they have personalities just like people. And then we go to consumers and then we say, if you wanted a relationship with a real estate company, as if it was a person, what attributes would you be looking for in that person to have a relationship with? And number one that scores off the charts in what consumers are looking for, your clients, is trust. This is a industry where they're is the opportunity, like the law, like some other industries where you're representing people. It's highly emotionally charged. They're big value transactions at stake where the professionals, if they do a good job, are going to receive handsome compensation. And all of this leads to I need to be able to trust that guy.
Right.
If I can trust that guy, that's who I'm going to work with. Well, guess what? LePage, this grand old Canadian brand that somehow has stayed on the forefront of innovation,
Right.
Scores off the charts with trust. So it's that alignment that you should be working for. And in your messaging, and we help in the development of our marketing collateral that we provide, but we know that's only the starting, because then someone like you and your team will take that seed and germinate it into something quite magnificent focused on your practice.
Yes.
And you're an entrepreneur and you run a business within a business, and we understand LePage Signature, your brokerage, is a business within a business. Real estate in the contemporary world is practiced on 3 levels for almost all transactions. There's some good local boutiques, but in general across North America, it is national brands with local brokerage brands, and then the frontline practitioners, the most successful of whom create gatherings or teams of other professionals. So this 3-level group, if you're going to be successful, you have to build off each other's messages. So trust, which is why we do the LePage Shelter Foundation. We put so much focus on it.
And congratulations on the award just a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you.
That is amazing.
Thank you. For your listeners, we were the very first real estate company in history to be awarded the Corporation of the Year by the Association of Fundraising Professionals. It was a big honor. The heavy hitters that were at the gala where this was presented, I'm going, wow, these are impressive philanthropists and corporations, and to come out the winner was
fantastic.
Was very gratifying, humbling, honestly, but. So the brand, in leveraging the brand is critically important, and not fighting against it. We talked about flying drones. One of the things you learned early on in flying drones is because you've got limited fuel, i.e. the battery, you fly into the wind when you're going away, and you fly back with the wind on your trip home, because you don't want to be fighting the wind when you're running low on fuel. Sometimes people fight against the brand in an attempt to be unique. So they bring out messages or, say, brand identity elements that are contrary to the brokerage and the national firm, and they're honestly swimming upstream. I scratch my head and I say, why? It can't work for anything other than, and I call it this, Ego Inc. Ego Inc.
I like
this
it.
is my internal term to my Tim. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you're successful enough that you can afford to fight against the firm, and the hundreds of millions of dollars of spend that occurs across the country, then, I hope your ego is satisfied, because you're not doing your business any good.
Oh, no, I would just play off the 105 years alone.
Canada's real estate company.
I go to town with that. Canada's real estate company, that's probably the
trademark term, and the one that everybody gets. It's one of those.
It's our board up there, by the way.
You guys leverage the brand.
Yeah, for sure.
Bless you. Quickly, because I know you asked me the 3 things.
Yes.
The middle one is, I generically call it business services. More specifically, people call it technology. And the third one is professional development. So those are the 3 pillars. Brand, which encompasses marketing, technology or business services and professional development and continuous learning. In that central space, I kind of laugh because I see companies now coming out and saying, well, we're not a real estate company, we're a technology company. And I say, my background's in technology. I said, there isn't any business. I don't care if you're changing oil, retailing, painting houses, selling houses. Everybody is a technology company today. So it's a little bit humorous, but I will say that the importance of end-to-end digitization within a business, so that the old analog, and by analog for your listeners, I mean paper. I mean people passing things from hand to hand. Those processes have to be replaced by digital processes, and it's rapidly happening. And we have digital brokerage pilots and investments in technology and development underway. This is the next stage of where we're going to see change, and you are at the forefront of what's available now when you're leveraging digital signature and the transfer of documents electronically. But it'll get way more than that, to the point where we're fully integrated with the boards and the national system and listings and lead generation and all the conveyancing and processing that occurs in your practice and at the brokerage.
I thought you were going to take me like AI stuff. I don't think that...
AI, it's fascinating. So we're doing work on AI as it relates to search.
Okay.
So how clients employ search in the early stages before they employ you or your team.
Okay.
Because there are weeks where a consumer client, a buyer, will be doing their own research. Particularly our first-time buyers, our millennials, are quite adept at search. They know search. They grew up, they're digital natives, they grew up using search.
It's the only thing they know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We want to make that experience more enriching for them, and we know that there are trigger points along the search where they need to be passed off to your team. And this is where we can use machine learning, intelligent software that, and it's a bit of a misnomer, intelligent software. It's software that can make rudimentary decisions in human intelligence terms as to what a consumer is really looking for.
Right.
And we're seeing the early stages of this with things like the photos that we host on LePage.ca. Increasingly, people will be able to search using natural language. I want to see a forest, and that's all they say. And and using Google's AI software, you can look through the array of photographs and determine the difference between a green building and a forest. And then the final one, I think, makes sense for any firm. It doesn't matter if you have the best marketing, the best technology and tools in your business. If people don't know how to use them, if they're not prodded into continuously learning about what clients' changing expectations are, the other two are lost. They're for naught. So for me, it's a cycle, and no one pillar is more important than the other.
Well, I think the most important thing that just came out of that for our Royal LePage listeners is our leader is really a tech nerd. And I love it because he's going to take us somewhere.
Well, you're a good man.
Well, Phil, it's true, right? Because I never knew that much about it. So it's amazing. I love it because I know that's just where we're heading. That's where buyers and sellers are heading. And for you to know that much, 15 years of actually being in the trenches, but now spending the rest of your time playing with it is you now are on the in the front lines of it.
We are hyper focused on technology that brings value to our clients or our teammates. And when people can bring an idea to me, I say, will it ultimately help our frontline people grow their business, or will it reduce the time they have to spend away from their clients? In other words, administrative time. If it can answer yes to one of those two or both of those, it can be green lighted and we can
Start
look
looking
at
it.
But if it's just because it's cool, and I see technology rolled out because it's cool, I say no, it's not seen the light of day.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that you can make your decisions based on those two things, right? It's not about
boil it down to something simple.
Nice, I love it. Keep it simple, stupid, right? As they say sometimes, right? Market. What what's your thoughts about how we ended this year?
Yeah,
we're almost to a close now for 2018.
Yeah. I had a wonderful opportunity last week. I got a small private meeting along with the president of the Canadian Real Estate Association, CEO, with the governor of the Bank of Canada. So we had a chance to sit down with some of his senior staff and talk about the economy and talk about the importance of housing and the economy. And it left me with a really positive feeling about the future of our industry. Again, boiling it down to the basic elements. In Canada, unlike many advanced economies around the world, we have increasing household formation. We have more people looking for a place to live, be it rent or buy, tomorrow than we do today.
Right.
Because we are the most successful advanced economy in the world in terms of immigration. And we have a fairly high birth rate relative to advanced, certainly relative to European companies and countries in Japan. So Canada's growing, fastest growing country in the G7, for example. And that means we're going to have to house more people in the future. You add to that the fact that Canada has become one of the most desirable places on earth to live, and our big cities are creating jobs like haven't been seen in our lifetimes.
Yep.
And it is a fine time to be in the business of providing housing or buildings for a business to work in, to be in real estate brokerage. Now, does that mean that we won't be without our wobbles or our corrections? No. And 2018 was a year of correction for major markets, really for almost everywhere in the country other than Quebec. Quebec got in on the big expansion party a little late, and now they're expanding rapidly. But things cooled right down in Ontario and the lower mainland of Vancouver. Part of it was driven by regulation, for example, the stress test on mortgages, which I have learned was done completely focused on protecting people's indebtedness and really wasn't focused on the housing industry as a piece of legislation.
Did you agree with it? Like, what was your thoughts on it?
Absolutely. Now,
because I felt the same way.
Yeah, as I understand it better,
right,
in terms of a public policy initiative, it doesn't matter whether you're in Moncton or Toronto. Moncton house prices are very stable. They're not rising. They don't have the population growth that we do here. In the GTA, the market's growing rapidly. But in both places, if interest rates were to rise really rapidly, say 200 basis points, two full interest rate points, that would put strain on either family, in the family with an overheated housing market or the family with a stable housing market. People seem to look at that measure as somehow attacking the housing industry.
Right.
It wasn't. It was, we were at the bottom of an interest rate cycle. Interest rates were as low as they've been in our lifetime.
Right.
And they needed to return to something approaching normality. So they were rising. And so policymakers, and it's not our elected officials that really make these decisions. It's professionals at places like the
Bank of Canada,
yep, and the organizations that overlook banking, that made the decision that we have to protect Canadians from, say, what happened to Americans during when their financial system collapsed a decade ago. So we were in a bad place 2 years ago. Some people thought, oh, the real estate industry is doing so well. Not doing well when prices are going up 25, 30, 35% a
Scary.
year. It is frightening. And they also said, I had knowledgeable business reporters, anchors at BNN say, oh, well, you guys must be happy. I go, you've got to remember, we represent both buyers and sellers. If you're lucky enough to have one of the few houses available for sale in the market, yes, the home sells for quicker, and the hours we invest in that transaction are lower. But can you imagine the hours we're investing on the buy side when we're working with a client that might go through 15, 20 multiple offer situations, might put in 5 formal offers to purchase, and all the hours that go into that, only to lose and lose and lose. Our costs spiral out of control.
And the emotional beat down.
Emotional. You're so right. You're so right. And so those imbalanced markets, either on the correction side when markets implode, or the runaway markets when assets are spiraling, asset values are spiraling out of control, they're both very dangerous markets. So the fact that we had a quiet year is challenging, I know, at the front line for people who earn their living in that, in our business, our team. Although you had an awfully good year.
Thank you.
Just a little bit of an aside right there.
Team.
Oh my goodness me.
We leverage the brand. In all honesty, Phil, I think what we do best is really leverage the brand.
Well,
I bring people like
sure
I look
did a
good
good
now
job
sitting
this year.
beside you, and people are going to want to hear what we have to say
Yeah.
because we had the president and CEO in. Right? It's quite simple. It doesn't take a lot. It's just you just got to be consistent at it.
Right.
But thank you for
Common
that. Sorry.
sense, it's not done commonly.
Oh, I love it.
So,
Yes.
right.
So that is going to be an Instagram picture of you, just so you know. We're going to overlay a quote of you as our executive producer writes it. So continue. Yes.
Okay. Well, the market going into 2019, we believe will be a stable, but not a return to the long. Over the long term, home prices have risen by 5% in Canada, so a little bit above inflation.
How many years are you talking about? Just
60,
approximately.
70 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Fantastic.
So take it from the Second World War to now.
5% year over the year. So it's
Over year, over
compounding.
year,
I
over
want to make sure the
year,
home
over
buyers
year,
and
over
sellers
year.
understand.
Exactly. And people say, well, but inflation's a little lower than that. Maybe it's 2 or 3% over that time, or 3.5%. And the reason it's slightly higher than inflation over the long term is because people like to live together. So we have this natural bidding up of land value and real property in cities because we gather together. And it doesn't matter whether it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, doesn't matter whether it's in recessionary times or expansionary times. People tend to live in the contemporary world in urban centers, and so there's a natural pressure on home prices to rise a little faster than inflation, but not a whole bunch more. So when home prices are rising at less than 5%, I consider that a correction, period of correction, and that's the period we're in right now.
Right.
Could we still move to a period where home prices are out of control? Absolutely. And this is one place where we're completely aligned with the Bank of Canada. Supply is the most serious issue facing major Canadian cities as it relates to housing. Supply. I don't care whether it's rental supply or supply of new homes for people to purchase. Canada is on a roll. It's not going to change during the next generation. Call it a 25-year outlook. We're going to continue to be one of the top 2 or 3 places on in the globe where people are going to want to live and work and invest in businesses, and we are going to have a challenge meeting the housing demand. So it has to be at the top of the public policy agenda. But it also, the market goes through waves, and there are periods of correction. I liken it a little bit, at the risk of being just a touch political, to climate change. And if you're completely oblivious to the science, you may say if you have a cold fall and it snows in October, that those idiots that talk about global warming don't know what they're talking about. What we're really talking about is long-term dangerous trends. And the long-term trend, it's not dangerous. It's a great problem to have as a country. I can tell you, it's a beautiful problem to have compared to, say, Japan or Italy, whose populations are actually shrinking, and the costs of providing health care to an aging population are rising. Canada is growing. Beautiful problem to have, but housing shortages are going to be the issue. I don't see a return to anywhere close to double-digit price increases in 2019. I think it will be a very steady, below 5%, below that long-term number, continuation of a period of overshooting. So we had a period of where values got out of hand, and they're correcting. But, we've got one of the tightest rental markets in the developed world. So it's these people that are coming into Canada. I was reading last on the weekend about the plans for Quayside, the Sidewalk Labs, the Google subsidiary. They chose, our city to build the first truly ground-up smart city in the world, and it is brilliant. It is brilliant.
So
all the
about
kind.
that.
It's so exciting. That kind of innovation in major Canadian cities will make people want to live here, and we need places to put them. So we could, if you look in the latter half of next year and into 2020, we could be into uncomfortable upward pressure on home prices again.
Well, just to add to the point of what's happening with Sidewalk Labs, for Amazon to even consider Toronto, that in itself, that's huge.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
Just to even consider to have a head office here,
especially in the era of Donald Trump, when there's so much protectionism and so much inward gazing in America, it would have been business. Been very, very troublesome for that business to have located outside of the U.S.
As a lot of our listeners are investors as well, Phil, I love the fact that you mentioned 5%, kind of hovering around there. That's a very safe, real estate is still a very safe, long-term investment.
Absolutely.
I want to get your take on that, like in terms of personally, do you like the long-term holds in real estate? I mean, that's all we really preach. It's not the buy now and then flip it and flip this and flip that. You get into all that kind of stuff. But just the whole buy and hold strategy. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, let's start what I don't like. I really dislike house flippers. That people that prey on the weak and the ignorant, and try to buy and flip a home without adding value. And here's where the big difference is. Buying a home and adding value, if you have personal skills in redevelopment, decoration, bringing a property up to market, that is beautiful entrepreneurship. And that is something I know, I'm sure you represent clients in that space.
For sure.
And right across Canada, and on the television, on numerous channels, you see people adding value and being compensated in a profit on the time and effort and costs that they put in that. That's different. But just a flipper, and we didn't have. There was much less of a problem of that in the GTA than some would have you believe. It just and there was a number of really important studies that showed just how small a percentage of the transactions in the GTA were speculators. Right. But in Vancouver, we had some issues.
Okay.
We had some issues, and they've been taken care of by the market, frankly. But long-term buy and hold, it's real estate. If you look at the current wealthiest generation, which is the baby boomer generation, and the massive amount of wealth in Canada and across North America that exists in that generation, a huge proportion of the wealth that they have accumulated during their life has been through being homeowners or investors. It is they say invest in real estate. They're not making any. Invest in land. They're not making any more of that.
Right.
It is very true. And as I spoke about earlier, people tend to want to live together. So a long-term hold on a commercial or a residential investment done properly with the assistance of a professional like on your team to make sure that they don't need, a return to 20% price appreciation to make the investment make sense.
Right. Don't inflate the numbers.
Exactly. Yeah. Look at reasonable numbers. Be reasonably conservative, and then people get wealthy by taking risk and investing in real estate. I don't know too many wealthy people, whether they're in IT or pharmaceuticals, whether they're doctors or accountants or whatever, who haven't made, when they come to their retirement, a significant part of their additional wealth beyond what they create from doing their day job through real estate. It's just it's a beautiful thing.
That means, a lot coming from you, Phil. You travel the world, but most importantly, day to day. Now you're traveling the country, and so you're meeting a lot of people, and you're out of the real estate world, like not salespeople or brokers. And for you to make mention of a lot of the people that you're with have made a lot of money in real estate just by doing the fundamentals right.
Exactly.
We talk a lot about with our investors. If you're going to be doing the buy and hold strategy, as you buy and hold and have tenants, take care of the tenants.
Yes. So true, isn't it?
Like, don't think you're the landlord, you're up here and the tenants are beneath you. Give them some value and be nice to them. They're your customers and they're giving you anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 a year.
Yes.
Be nice to them.
Yes.
A bottle of wine maybe in the holiday season. Ask what they need during a couple of months. Hey, Phil the tenant, did you need a hand with this or whatnot? Like the fact that they treat them beneath. Like
or
if the landlord's treating,
they could fall into that trap. I agree.
Right.
Horrible. You probably employ that philosophy in managing your team as well.
So true, Phil. So true. I think what we do best, myself and my partner, we give value. And it really does. I say it all the time. I sit down with Chris and Jeff Slightum here at Signature Realty, and we talk about it all the time. It's giving the value. It comes down from you.
Yep.
It really does come from yourself and the team at LePage.
And you have a human connection.
Yes, I think that's the most important. So we have a team of a little over 20 realtors, and with support staff, Clem, Laura, Shem, and I'm going to bring in Shem a little later because she's from the relocation services. She's originally started there.
Oh, very cool.
On Winford, and she's been with us for 13 years. Our turnover rate is very low,
which is
very low,
very impressive because Lord knows there aren't a lot of people dangling shiny objects in front of your team saying, "Come work with me,
come work with us." Right? Look, we have the policy. Like we totally understand that over a long period, we think we're going to bring enough value to enough people that they will leave, but and try it out on their own. The door's always open, but we're okay with that.
Yeah,
I think if we do a good enough job,
don't burn any bridges.
That's probably the number one thing. What are a couple of tips, Phil, that you would give some new salespeople getting into the business? Because we have a lot of listeners that are just starting out.
Yeah.
To hear it from you is going to be very, very valuable. What's one or two things that we can leave our listeners with today?
Do your research before you get involved, or at least when you start your formal training. Talk to seasoned professionals, both those who run teams, those who are sole practitioners. Meet with a series of leaders, managers in the industry that run businesses that you respect, so that are widely respected in the industry. So this is the basic research. And of course, online, you can learn a lot about the real world life of being a real estate professional by reading blogs, getting involved in Facebook chats. Decide the kind of person you want to be and the kind of person you don't want to be.
That's a great point.
Right?
Yep.
And then commit to a brokerage, commit to a company, and give it your all. Make sure that you've, and you will learn this as part of your formal training. You'll hear this from good leaders in the industry. Make sure you're prepared mentally and financially to give it your all for a period of time. This is an entrepreneurial business. You can't, it's not like you're getting a 9-to-5 job, say working for Bell, marketing mobile plans or something, where you know you're going to be getting a check and this sort of thing. This is one of the most entrepreneurial, limitless opportunity, but challenging and frightening, honestly, businesses to get started in. So make sure you're prepared for that 6 months to get rolling, get it under your belt, to learn, and don't get too upset at failure. Always remember this fellow when I was a young when I moved from systems engineering into sales at IBM, and I heard a seminar by a guy called Art Mortimer, who's still out there, I think. He's a very old gentleman, but he said he wrote a book called How to Thrive on Fear, Anxiety, and Rejection. And
you generally wouldn't write that title, right? So,
exactly.
How to thrive. Okay, go on.
And the idea is, and I'm sure you preach this to your young people, your new people, every no is an opportunity to rephrase and come back with a different solution that's closer to a yes.
Yes.
And you can't take it personally. You can't. I mean, you can have your sad days. You can have those big cries. It's always nice to have someone, a buddy or a spouse or someone to shoulder to cry on. But it's a wonderful industry. The kind of upside and freedom. Freedom is a huge one. When I talk to people in our industry and I say, why? How did you end up in this industry? You were trained as a teacher, and here you are, a successful real estate professional. I think freedom. I can pursue the things that provide me joy in my life. I can look after my family, and all the while making a good living. Now, what I also find is people that talk a lot about great freedom get so hooked on the industry that they work too hard and they don't have a lot of freedom.
Sure.
So
That's funny how that works.
I encourage them. I say, make sure you carve out enough time for family and for yourself, or you can burn out in this industry. But God, people love it. People don't realize outside the industry how much people love this industry, how much they love what they do, which is, for me, half of the joy of being in at our national conference that we had with all these people that honestly love what they do. There's no one there that's going, God, when is this over so I can leave?
We're gonna get out of here.
Love it.
Halifax, Australia. I love the places you guys are choosing. I get it. Why not?
Yeah,
you
why
have
not?
to travel.
Exactly. Why don't you go somewhere you like?
It's so funny that you said about loving the business and loving the people that you meet. Last week's episode, I had an opportunity right at this table, Phil, to sit down with 3 very inspiring women. I met them 2.5 years ago at a Tim Hortons.
Really?
We spoke about investing into real estate. They were just about to start the process. And fast forward 2.5 years now, 3 of them, they buy all their real estate together, joint ventures. They
each have a different career?
They actually, funny enough, they're all project managers. They were all project managers.
IT project
yes.
managers?
3 different companies.
Yeah.
Friends, 2 of them are friends just in the neighborhood.
Yep.
And so they got together and started wanting to invest into real estate. So
and they needed a professional as a partner.
As a partner to walk them through the process. But it was funny, as we sat down and we spoke about it, taped it, and did a very similar setting to this. The joy that came out of me to hear what they've accomplished now.
Yes.
Just by taking action.
Yes, taking a risk.
Huge risk, right?
Yeah.
They were friends. And so they even made mention of it, that they were concerned that it could have hurt their friendship.
Yeah.
But they got through that, bought they purchased numerous amount of doors now. I can't even count the guy. I don't know what number they're at, but they were scared at the start, and they helped each other. I don't
blame them.
And for me, and they were actually even scared to put the mic in front of their face, before we started. And they know they don't mind me telling the story. They were scared to do this, but they're like, you know what, Jas, we just wanted to take action again.
Yeah.
And so that was the joy of being in the business
Yes.
for me, right? To see that all come to fruition.
Now, any kids? Are they young single people?
No, they each have two. No, one lady has one kid, another lady has 4 kids.
Wow.
And
So
grade
see,
2.
this is.
Oh,
like-
and sorry. Let me make mention really quickly. I've never met any of their husbands.
And they do all the focus,
All of it.
all the work,
All of it.
They run families,
All of it.
They've got their own careers.
It's
These
the
are
best thing in the world.
They should write a book. You should write a book with
I
them.
like that. I actually really like that idea. I'll get the team on it for sure. But yeah, it was so neat because
Wow.
I never even met their husbands. They were just willing to do this themselves.
Yeah. That is such an inspirational story, and with the right partner that is scouring the market, has their finger on the pulse every day of what's happening in the market, can advise them when it's a opportunity or a time to be aggressive, a time to be very conservative, a time to hold them, a time to fold them.
Yeah.
This isn't as risky as you think it is.
So true.
This is, you take the underlying demographics in Canada and the expansion that the economy and the country is undergoing overall. It's in many ways much more risky to invest in a company on the stock market.
So true. Phil, I've went over my allotted time with you. I want to thank you.
Well, thank you. It
So
goes so
much.
quickly.
It does. I could talk over hours about this. Thank you so much. I hope that you'll join us hopefully mid-year next year to kind of do
Looking
kind of a
forward to it.
halftime report.
Absolutely.
I know you're a sports guy, so I can use that analogy
Absolutely.
with you. And as always, thank you so much, Phil.
Well, my pleasure. And I wish you the same kind of success or even more next year because, man, you had a wonderfully successful 2018. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Phil. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. There we go. Good day. How are you?